Hello, welcome to Mystic Revolution. Susanna and I are so glad you're here.
And this season is about strengthening our soul senses.
Before we get started, yay, meditation.
Yay!
So how about you close your eyes if you're not driving and notice that you have a body and your body is connected to the earth. And let your body rest into the earth if you're sitting. Let yourself just melt into the chair. Good. Actively noticing the connectedness between your body and the earth. And let's breathe in from the universe, filling chest and belly. And releasing to the earth at your own rate. And be here now. And feel free to stay meditating as Susanna and I are chatting. But if you'd like, you can open your eyes and move around, maybe touch the earth. And we're going to get started. So we're in season 4, and we've been talking about our soul sensibilities and opening to our psychic information, how to be comfortable with that, and how to share that, how to receive that. And so Susanna is leading us in a conversation today, a very exciting conversation. So I'll let her introduce it.
Today, we've got a pretty exciting topic, I think. We're going to talk about signs, symbols, archetypes, and metaphors. And this may go into the next episode because there's a lot to talk about here. But when it comes to soul senses or psychic sensibilities, right, we get information in a lot of ways. And we talked a little bit about the clairs in our last episode, but we get information through our five senses, perhaps a little bit heightened, right? And then the more invisible senses, if you will, right? The inner sight or the clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, the inner feeling, inner knowing. Some people get information through taste or smell. And sometimes the information that comes in the form of a picture or a color or a word or something that at first glance seems perhaps even unrelated to what we thought we were going in to read. And just to sort of back up a little bit, this is where we've been talking about giving readings, giving soul readings, giving psychic readings, and also receiving readings. And both Wendy and I, when we work with clients, we not only do readings, but we also encourage and guide people to be able to read themselves. And so we both think that's very, very important. I'm just talking for you, Wendy, but I think
It's essential. I pretty much don't straight read anymore.
Yeah, me
always
either.
read with people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think for anybody who's been a long time reader or is just starting to read, talking about signs, symbols, archetypes, and metaphors is something else we're going to talk about is fun to go over. So what are they? Just to sort of jump in, I'm going to start with, I brought an apple. Can you see my bright yellow apple? So an apple has a lot of meaning. It's symbolic. It's a symbol, it's a thing, but it has meaning in a variety of different ways. And I think that symbols and archetypes give context to things that maybe we don't necessarily have words for. And they help us understand things within ourselves and others that yeah, just seem a little bit out of reach. It's like an impression. It's like I think of them as clues, right? It's a clue to discern. So just like an apple to me might mean one thing, an apple to you might mean another thing, but there is also the collective understanding of what an apple means. And in certain, right, if we think of like Eve and the apple, or Snow White and the apple, or, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. There's so many different meanings that you can give to this. But when the job of a reader is to offer up the apple, right? And use your soul senses to discern what it could how it could possibly be relevant.
Yeah, I think it's a great illustration. By the way, we think of even the apple, but it actually doesn't say that. It's just our culture. It's our culture that's put that on there. It's just a good example, right?
About Eve, yeah.
About that it was an apple. Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Yeah.
That is fascinating. It's the fruit, right? Is it the fruit?
Fruit.
Okay, yeah, well, I just thought it was
apple, because in all our culture, it's an apple.
Right.
Right. So we just think it's an apple.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so that's one of the interesting things about reading is that sometimes we hear words or see things that are clear, and other times we get these symbols and then they need to be unpacked.
Yeah.
And my teacher said, like, in the behind the scenes of it all is actually what's being sent spiritually is a symbol. And then the symbol unpacks into symbols that make sense to us, into colors, words, etc., etc. So like, how does it, go over the high power lines spiritually? Yeah. It comes through as a symbol and it unpacks and unpacks, and it just keeps unpacking.
Well, I just wanted to interject. I think that's why it's so important to just let it be an apple, not immediately attach meaning to it, because there is so much that one could potentially unpack, right?
Yes. And so many times ago, I remember I gave this illustration where I'd seen what ended up being the joke, black and white and red all over. I think you might remember, it was an early reading that I did. And I explicated all the stuff about it. And then the guy at the end, he's like, well, I haven't told anyone in the world, but I'm working on a painting called Black and White and Red All Over. And, if I had just said, what I see is black and white and red all over, like the joke before, and then I did unpack it and it was relevant, but still, like, it would have been more powerful. So just even lead with that, like, boom, even though it's too weird. Like, I was such a new reader. I was just like, this is too weird. I'm seeing this joke, but I'm seeing the picture, but I'm seeing the, but it was exactly like, he's like, I don't even know how you possibly could know that. Right. So it's just helpful. Sometimes just say what you see.
And say what you see.
And then if there's unpacking to do, unpack. And sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that practice, I mean, whatever, we're going to talk discernment until the cows come home. It really prevents one from putting one's own meaning on it. And also overthinking and trying to make it mean something. And, you were talking about how you hardly ever give a reading. It's like read other people. It's a mutual reading. And I think that's what makes it fun, right? If you see something and mention it and the other person gets a similar vibe, or you start to really get tuned into that you're both actually tuning into the same thing, right?
Yeah.
The mutual validation. And that allows for even more expansion, I think. So yeah, I love that. Yeah. And so, I mean, symbols are used in all facets of life. And related to symbols are archetypes. Archetypes can be symbols, but they also have, they're definitely, I would say, more in collective consciousness they are based on, and please jump in, Wendy, but they're based on, sort of patterns and things that consistently sort of happen within those umbrellas. I mean, an example, right, is the hero and the hero's journey, right? Or the mother. But if a mother shows up, or a specific mother, right, there might be other things in that to unpack. And certainly, we can use something like the example of the mother and think, oh, nurturing, warm, loving, but it might also be showing up to highlight maybe the shadow parts of that, right? Whatever that is, maybe over nurturing or something like that. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And I think to go along with this whole thing, but particularly symbols and archetypes, they're everywhere and they're nonstop, and they're constantly being created, and they're constantly being reappropriated and redistributed and constantly just churning. And I am this huge fan of, I call it feeding the well, which I got probably from The Artist's Way, which is popular like in the 80s or something. But it's like I'm constantly purposely, it's what I do anyway, but purposely feeding the well, so with art, or with religious or spiritual stuff, but just everything, because whatever pictures, symbols, metaphors that I'm being that are coming to me, they're just enriching what I can pull from. And I'm like always joking about my misspent youth watching cartoons. It's like, oh, there's that cartoon. Okay, that's what it means. It's like, and that's a really good, cartoons are very good for finding archetypes and symbology for humans. Like that's what they operate on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I love that misspent youth, wasted time. Actually, no. Everything we do, everything we ingest, everything we experience helps fuel the symbols, the archetypes that help us understand ourselves better, right? We can, especially, with archetypes, we can connect with the qualities of a certain archetype. Go back to mother, there's the mother, there's also the dark mother, right? And it tells us something about ourselves that maybe something that we need to embrace more, maybe something that we could tend to. I'd love to hear some of the cartoon archetypes that sort of like, light you up. But even in cartoons, I mean, there are, whether it's humor or softness or playfulness or magic, I mean, all of those things touch us because they actually are a part of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about this topic, I had something come to mind, if it's okay to share, of like how this works.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
So what happened is I'm looking at somebody that I've only seen a few times, but I'm just like, I'm looking at her and I'm seeing that her ground, I was particularly tuned into her grounding, and I was seeing that there was one stream coming out, but it was all symbols. And it was before we decided on this topic, but like not long after we decided on this topic, I'm just like, oh, maybe I should bring this up. And the symbols were, it's a particular pattern that I'd seen some spiritual person use as like you use your typewriter to make, little squiggles and little stars and little, and I was just like, that's like spiritually-ish. And I saw it going down. And then I worked with her on this a little bit, and I said what I was seeing and what I was reading about it, that's the point. I'm reading her. She's releasing old symbols, old understandings of spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
And then as I'm talking, I'm watching her start to bring 3 new streams of these same symbols in, except for they were opposite. They were like this.
Wow. That's fascinating.
I know. And I'm like, look, and then I'm like, so cool. I'm like, and you're bringing in new, and it's opposite, but it's the same symbols opposite. And I'm like, this is all I got on this, you know? And we finished that part of the reading, and I'm just like, what are you noticing about what I'm saying with this? And she's like, it's so funny because I'm not saying who it is or anything, but the basics of what she said is that she is tuning in more spiritually. So it's three, like one is coming out. It used to be like one, and now it's like three times as much. So she's more spiritual, but she's letting go of the more religious aspects and understandings and beliefs, and just letting things be just more real spiritually. Like, so her faith is increasing, but her religion is decreasing. And so like that's what it can look like. And it was just straight up symbols that in particular didn't mean anything, but the string of them told me something that I could reflect back to her, validate her, and then and it was just like, wow, like that's exactly what I was saying.
That's amazing.
Is what her experience was, and how empowered that has her feel. And then it validates that it's real, and you know, I can encourage her about it. So like, I just thought that was a really good example.
It's a great example. And right, the symbology of things, symbols change. They can show us places where I'm just going to say, sometimes imprison ourselves with our attachment to them. And, all of this, right, goes back to our conversation about mastering your energy and owning your discernment and owning your ability to choose and change. And I don't know what this person was doing in particular, I can imagine, but their choices to shift released a lot of energy and literally changed the story and the experience of what they were having. And it was showing up psychically, showing up energetically, right? I'm sure it was also showing up like in their general body language and just in their face and whatever. But I mean, this is what I think is so fascinating, that you can see these things and you can play with them and tweak them, right? If you're, whatever, we all do readings on ourselves. And if we notice something, it doesn't have to be like, oh, there's this thing, I've really got to work on that. Sometimes it can be as simple as, oh, there's that thing, right? Or, oh, there's that thing. That's super cool. Like, let's amplify that. Right. And it can happen pretty quickly. Yeah. And so the cool thing, I mean, we're obviously kind of getting into this, but we often, these symbols and signs and archetypes, come from our subconscious, come from, sort of our unconscious living, and they surface in a way that makes us pay attention in a way that maybe like my hearing a voice repeating something that I've been beating myself up about, or, whatever. It gets my focus. It gets my like, oh, okay, why is this seemingly weird symbol showing up? And gives a different perspective. Yeah.
And then, like you said, I mean, I just want to say it again to emphasize it. So we see the symbol, and it helps mirror to us what's going on, or for someone else. And then we're like, oh, this is something I want to amplify. This is something I just want to sit, let it be, something I'd like to just let go a little about. Like, we can choose. Choose because we can see it better. We can have a relationship with it. We can make choice because we become more conscious.
Yeah. And I think what you said about having a relationship with it is really important. I mean, if it's coming up, we've been having a relationship with it, whether we knew it or not. And we can look at what kind of relationship that is, depending on what we just discern its importance, its meaning in our life. And I mean, so it's not just, oh, let's keep this, let's throw it away or whatever. Let's work with it differently. Okay, right? Like I see how perhaps I'm leaning more this way when really the truth of who I am now is more this way. And the thing with symbols is that sometimes they show us where we're still, like your client, we're still holding on to old things when actually, like, we've already left the station on that thing.
Yes.
But we're
Yeah.
still dragging around a bunch of crap that doesn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can let it go.
So
with that, how about we have a little break? We can let go of section 1.
Okay.
And soon we'll be back for section 2 of this episode.
Sounds great.
Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hey everyone, just a friendly reminder that on the first Tuesday of every month, we hold a Mystic Revolution meditation, and you're invited. Just go to our website and you'll find the link. We look forward to seeing you then.
Raise your vibration and energize your life with specialized Fibonacci tuning forks that deepen meditations and empower self-healing. Get your vibrational sound tools for personal enhancement at energybodytuners.com.
Welcome back to Mystic Revolution. Susana and I are so glad you're here. We're talking about signs and symbols and metaphors, and we're just going to jump right back in. Susana?
Yeah. So, Wendy and I were talking over the break about some of the symbols in our collective that we're all really attached to for one reason or another. One is the dollar sign, which is a symbol, right? The dollar symbol, or I'm just going to say any currency symbol from any country. And we're also attached to numbers, and it could be, I'm going into like age or weight or how much money, how many numbers are in your bank account, or how many numbers, whatever.
Right. Like, do you have a favorite number, Susana?
My favorite number is 9.
Really?
Yeah. What's your favorite number?
13, since I'm young. Yeah.
13. So, and right, 13 has special meaning for you, and 9 has special meaning for me. Mm-hmm. So, well, this goes into sign. So whenever I see a 9, like, I'm like, oh, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. It sort of like gives me a little, whoo, like that. That's right.
Yeah.
And other things show up like that too. So we're kind of dancing around here on things, but that's okay. Let's talk about what 13, you don't have to say what it means for you, but like what it does to validate you or uplift you.
Well, it's a wonderful entryway we do want to talk about signs. And for me, 13, it's just always, I don't know, it might have started because I'm, naturally like, don't want to fit in or whatever. Like, it's just like there's even still buildings don't have 13 in them. It's crazy. Hotel rooms and help to, it's just like, are you kidding me? What day and age is this? It's very strange. And so I think I was drawn to it. I'm like, people are afraid of this number. And I think I was drawn to it. And then I started playing with it, and it's turned out that I've had so many wonderful things like happen on the 13s and et cetera, et cetera. And then there was one time in my late 20s, someone I was really into, although I shouldn't have been, I was really into, and he broke up with me on 13, and I'm like, damn, my 13's ruined. And then like not very long went by, and then not very long went by, I'm like, oh, that was so good that he broke up with me, because I never would have broken up with him, and it needed to happen. And then I like recontextualized it. I'm like, thank you, 13.
13 was a good sign after all. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got together with my honey on the 13th, of full moon, honey, and the 13th. So we've been together almost 28 years. And we
Wow.
honor every 13 and every moon. Not like, in normal ways, like just by like saying hi to the moon and being grateful and just noticing the 13s and being grateful. It's all about being grateful and appreciating.
I love that. That's so
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, like there's no diamond rings involved. But look at all the money we're saving. Oh, money.
Money. Yeah. Well,
Currency symbol.
should we talk about money and the currency symbol right now? We can talk about the currency symbol in readings and what that means for people. But really, I mean, that is a symbology in our active conscious and in our subconscious that definitely impacts how we relate in the world and how we see and sense things. I don't know. What do you have to say about that?
What I have to say is that we are the choosers about all of this. I think that's the most important thing. That I love the number 13, and when it shows up, I'm happy. And I know it's just like you said about 9, but like that's my choice. And then other people are like, man, no. And that's their choice. And what we can do is we can bring up the energy. We can bring up the like hooray-ness, the conscious co-creation with the number, the symbol, or we can de-energize it. It's just so important that if it has any negative connotation, that we de-energize that. We can clear it so it has no power over us.
Yeah, and it makes me think of in tarot, right? When the devil shows up or the fool, I mean, one's first impression might be like, oh, I don't want that. But there's so much deeper meaning, obviously. And when you view it, I'm going to go back to what we were talking about in the last episode. What's a healing here? Yes. What's a healing? Even if it feels like something that is a dire symbol or something that in your life has meant something.
We were just talking about this, like death and resurrection, crucifixion.
Yeah. Absolutely. The idea of crucifixion is horrific.
It's excruciating.
and the picture of it is horrific. However, right, there's a lot of different meanings around it, and it means different things to different people. And we get to choose what it means, and we get to look at it as, again, what is the healing out of this?
Yes.
How is this going to help me? How is this going to help me move forward? It's not a sign that, something terrible is going to happen. I mean, I think of how long, the old idea that black cats were somehow like total misfortune and you were just screwed if you crossed a black cat came in your vicinity. And that is a choice to believe in that. I mean, for me, if I see a black cat, I'm just delighted, and it brings me a lot of joy.
They're so cute.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are very simple, basic examples, but you can extrapolate that to whatever symbology, whatever archetype, whatever sign comes to you.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that it's just so important to de-energize out the impending doom of things.
Yeah.
Right. Because it just in this very, very short conversation, we've talked about, death and crucifixion and black cats and 13 and these things that have meant terrible, terrible. And like, that's what there is to release. We can use 13 or cats or not, but the whole idea is to let go of that. And so to be able to see clearly, is there meaning here? Because not every cat that we see means anything. Not every eagle that we see means something, but it might. And some of us are attuned to different things. If I see, some people see an eagle, it has great meaning. And other people are like, oh, cool, an eagle. And so I think it's very individual. When I was thinking about when I was meditating on this part of our conversation, that's what was most important to me, is that we are the active co-creators in our lives with heaven and earth and each other. And so, there's some people who are constantly seeing signs in the physical world, license places or sides of trucks or butterflies or whatever. They're constantly seeing the clock say 444 or whatever. And that is their dance with the universe.
Yeah.
And there's others of us that are really not tuned into that. And that's not how we're getting our information. We're getting it differently. And so there is no is. That's what I'm always saying. On the inside or the outside, there is no is, but we can tune in and say, is this something for me?
Yeah. Is this something for me? I love that. Your mention of eagles reminds me of, I did a reading once and on someone, and I saw an eagle underwater, like literally like underwater, and eagle underwater, the color of the eagle, it was like a darker color, but it had a bright red beak, or I'm sorry, a bright yellow beak. Breaking all that down, there's a lot of different symbols in that. And anyway, this particular thing with the beak real yellow, that was the focal point on this powerful creature, fly swimming underwater, sort of under the radar. I mean, that's sort of what it ended up being. And but water being sort of like the collective life. I mean, and these are all meanings that meant something to this person. To someone else, it might be like, what the
right?
What a weird thing to see. But to your earlier point of unpacking symbology, it can go as deep as you want to go, or not.
Yeah. And sometimes, like when I'm reading with someone, I'll get stuff and I'm just like, this is out of my ken. This is not a picture that I ever have seen before. This is their picture. So I'm just like telling them their picture, and they're like, oh yeah, that's blah, blah, blah. And it means blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, good.
Yeah.
Because I don't know it. It's pretty cool that way.
It's really, really cool that way. And I mean, it goes back to when we were talking about having integrity in your reading. If you don't know,
I don't know this symbol.
I don't know it.
Yeah, but it's here. So what's it mean? Oh, good. That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I just wanted to conclude the signs thing and say that I think the most important thing is that, and some people are like, oh, Wendy, you know how to bring the good news out. And like, I'm all about realistic. I'm all about reality. I'm not one of those optimists. Yeah. I'm not an optimist, right? Like, I'm just like, I want to be a realist. This is what I see. This is what is real. This is the sacred reality or whatever. And in everything that we're seeing, it is good news. Okay, well, death is coming. Well, that's great because we're transforming and we are death and resurrecting to the next thing. It's not bad news. It's great news. And even when it's time to physically die, like, it's challenging, but it's like a blossoming into a whole new thing. So like, how do we, it's not adding positivity on, it's just like, okay, realistically, what's this sign and what is it's always hope. I mean, I don't read unhope. What about you? Like, I'm always reading hope because people have choices. And even at the last minute, it's just like, okay, you're going 100 miles an hour toward a brick wall. You might want to, turn.
Yeah.
That's good news.
That's good news.
Turn.
You can still turn. Well, yeah, I agree. And, we've talked about this. The moment that you mention something in a reading, that you've seen something, like it changes everything in that moment, right?
Yeah.
It opens up another door. It opens up a new perspective or more choices. And so simply in reading, simply in paying attention to these things, you're already moving towards a shift.
Yes.
And you can choose whether it's a shift towards something that is more helpful or one that maybe keeps you more stuck. And I know there are a lot of people that are like, you got to your point, or be realistic, but be realistic towards sort of in the opposite direction, because, right, bad things happen to good people. The world is in horror and chaos, right? All of these terrible things are happening. And we can still choose, right, to lean into what is a healing, what will shift, what can I do, right? And look at the signs and symbols of the world for what they are.
Yes.
Not greenwashing it or trying to pretend, right, the horrors don't exist.
Right.
But this is what is. What are we going to do with it?
What do we get to do about it?
What do we get to do about it? I love that shift. What do we get to do about it?
Yeah.
And we could talk more about this.
Yes, we are definitely going to do more on signs, symbols, archetypes, and especially metaphors.
Yeah, we'll talk about metaphors next. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Before we sign off, Wendy's going to lead us in a great meditation.
Okay, great short meditation. Again, we still have bodies. Say hello to them, and hello, Earth. And let's say hi to the heavens and breathe in the breath of life, filling up your chest and belly and releasing to the earth at your own rate. Just take a few breaths. And so we kind of scooped at the bottom of the pot a little bit. We said a whole lot of different things and metaphors and signs. And so there might be a lot of stuff churning around in your space. Just let everything that's yours just take up happy resonance in your own body. And all this other stuff, all these other ideas, just let them flow away as you breathe. And let our ideas return to us, and you keep what's yours. And feel free to keep meditating. Susana and I are going to come back to everyday consciousness and say thank you so much for playing with us. And we look forward to seeing you next time here on Mystic Revolution.
See you next time.
Thanks so much for playing with us. Please support Mystic Revolution by liking and sharing our show.
And sign up to get notified when new content is available. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always.
Join us for our monthly Mystic Meditation on the first Tuesday of the month at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time.
Click on the link in the description to get more information and join the Mystic Revolution.
We look forward to seeing you then.